I am back over by the rockery today with an animal that I am not comfortable handling directly. I will give you two clues. First is I don't like its teeth. The second is that it is responsible, indirectly, for around 5,000 deaths in Africa every year. It's actually probably a multimammate mouse. I've got it in a tub here, but you should be able to get a look at it just through there. There's a beautiful little guy. It's also called a soft-furred rat. This is still only a baby, very baby. I will put a picture of another one up over here, slightly more mature. I haven't actually been very good at getting pictures of adults, but hopefully I'll be able to pop one up for you. Now, the way that this small, innocuous little animal is responsible for so many deaths every year is because it is the main vector of a disease called Lassavirus, which you might not have heard of. Probably don't want to be thinking too much about viruses right now with the whole quarantine, but Lassavirus is widespread in parts of tropical Africa, especially West Africa and Central Africa, and it kills, again, 5,000 people according to estimates by the CDC in the US. I would like to compare that to a very different statistic, and that statistic is snakebite deaths. Now, Africa's snakebite deaths are horrific. The numbers are between 3,000 and 80,000, and the higher number is because we really have no idea. It's a big continent, very sparse medical facilities in large parts of that. It's probably somewhere in between those two numbers, and it's probably more than 5,000 deaths a year, but the difference between dying of Lassa fever and dying of snakebite is snakebite deaths, for the most part, can be avoided by behaving differently towards the snake. Snakes can also learn, so a snake that has a negative encounter with a person once is going to be more aggressive in future encounters. A snake which has repeated non-violent encounters with humans is going to see them less of a threat. That can be a double-edged sword, because then that snake is going to think, okay, I don't have to flee when I hear a person coming, and that might mean they get into conflict situations more easily, or they get trodden on more easily, and that is a problem. But for the most part, by behaving non-violently to snakes, by finding ways that are non-directly threatening so they don't associate human with threat, to drive them away from areas where they shouldn't be, and by making sure your house is not inviting to snakes, snakebite deaths can be prevented. Lassavirus can be spread by the fur, feces and urine of multimammate mice, which can be anywhere. They can be almost invisible. This is the most common pest rat over much of inland Africa. It thrives around humans. It is the fastest breeding mammal on the world. They call them multimammate mouse because they have a lot of nipples. And those nipples are used for suckling vast quantities of young. They have a phenomenal reproductive rate, and that means that they can really spread that disease. This one is unlikely to. Lassa fever is not well documented in Zambia, very rare. There has been a single case of related one, but I still don't want to hold it directly. But anyway, snakes eat rats. Lassa can be spread invisibly by those little pieces of feces, urine and fur that you don't see, that are spread around your house when these things go around eating your leftovers, tidying up after you, really, at night. A snake would eat that rat. That would no longer be a problem. Snakes definitely eat these rats, because another thing I want to say about multimammate mice, and this is one that is really insane, because they are so fast breeding, they are really great for the exotic pet industry. Not as pets directly, usually. Instead, they're usually kept as feeder animals, because that incredible reproductive rate, and they can reproduce many times in a year and have litters of over 20 young each time. That means that you're producing a vast amount of food for all sorts of reptiles that need a vast amount of food. So now there are feral populations of these very fast breeding little mammals over Europe, over America. They have the potential to spread a very dangerous disease. The other thing I think is worth mentioning, and this is a great opportunity to do so, is the difference between a rat and a mouse. In Europe, rats are bigger. Straightforward. In Zambia, if you see a rat, it's probably this, just grown up. If you see a mouse, it's also very often this, in this state. You will also get things in rural parts, like the rock rats will come into people's houses. I should be able to put a picture of those up. They're quite similar looking. A lot of rodents are quite similar looking. He wasn't in the house. He fell in the sump, a long way from the house. Sump's are lethal. check them regularly. I'm going to let him go again because I don't think he's going to try and get into the house because it's not somewhere he's familiar with. There's plenty for him to eat around the garden without bothering me, without putting anything anywhere dangerous for me. Any fur, feces, or urine he leaves outside will be broken down and are unlikely to infect anyone. Our owls will love either him or his descendants, not in a way that is really consensual, but ending up as food for predators means those predators are still around. If there's ever an explosion, those predators can deal with it quickly and efficiently, which is good, because I don't want to die of Lassavirus. So, I'm going to let him go.